number is every 2 inches.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, that's
Okay.
And then we would call, 5.5 or something like that.
right.
5 1/4. But every 2 inches, there's a number written down and a hash mark between them.
And it's fairly crucial to make sure that your sheets the marks are even on both sides, and also with that, making sure that your lock attachment to the jib is the same length. So if you're taking it on and off, it all works out at the same time.
Mark your port and starboard ends of your sheet so you put it back on the same way.
Put it on the same way, right, exactly.
What's next? There's a couple more while we're on the subject of jibs. So these are actually from that same exact sequence as here.
Right.
Same boats, but now we're actually looking at the upper part of the jib as well, so we can kind of, again, get a good visual on the, the difference between full sails and more twist. You can see the boat on the left, again, they have the flattest jib. If you look at the bottom of their jib, it looks flatter here. The stripe is less thick than the boats to the right. The jib, as you look up to the top, appears flatter, and it's further inboard on the spreader. So flatter jib and sheeted harder. The other trend that we noticed in this lineup, and you can see in this picture, what else can you guys tell that stands out about the boat on the left?
Their boat's flatter.
Obviously flatter, exactly, and that comes with flatter sails. There.
Yep.
So again, I think the boat in the middle is probably the fullest sail overall. Again, looking up at the stripes, the stripe just below the spreader and the stripe below that. Can you guys all tell that that's a bit of a fuller overall sail? And it's not way different on the spreader as far as where the leech is compared to the boat on the right, but the one on the left, it's clearly further outboard. And you can see, looking up here above the spreader, you can see the leeward side of their jib. You cannot see the leeward side of that jib.
You can just see it on the other boat.
You can just see it on the other boat. So, and that's all. The camera's lined up so that the clew and the tack of the jib are dead in line with each other, which is what the coaches off the boat are going to look for to compare this. And it's a pretty obvious difference.
Right.
So again, this would be a little bit of a better look for like when they were powered up. If they got a puff, as Allan was saying, and they got the boat to accelerate, they're gone. But they're going to struggle to get there, especially if it's a little bit choppier or they're coming off the line and there's a boat to leeward of them. It's going to take them longer to accelerate because the leech is more closed and the jib is flatter. The boats on the right will accelerate a little bit quicker, but they're not going to hit the 200% of your speed target goal as quickly as this boat would.
And you can see both sails are in unison, right? The main is also trimmed harder on that boat. I mean, it's like you can see the mast here on this boat. You can see the mast here on this boat. No mast on this boat. And it's just, if the jib's going to be trimmed harder to be flat, the main has to do the same thing. Like, I think that's a key. I mean, we'll get to main trim later. And at least the good part for them is the sails matched, right? The worst thing there would be an eased, twisty main with a sheeted on jib, or a sheeted on main and a twisty jib would be the worst. At least they matched, which is a good thing, but you can see how they did that. Flat and tight, fuller, twistier kind of sails as they go across.
So did you guys do this on purpose, or is this just how these three boats set up themselves?
Just how they
set up themselves.
So that was my point about style and technique.
Yeah.
When you think about a guy who's coming up from Great Britain, right? He's sailing in ocean swell, most likely, and so he's probably sailing in more breeze than we typically sail in, and that explains quite possibly his natural tendency.
And they had 5 people on
And
board.
they had, that was my next thing, and I think I see a fifth person.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that, but let me prove your point with an exclamation mark.
Okay.
The woman driving this boat from Great Britain is the women's moth world champion, where they sail
Absolutely.
flipped over to windward going upwind.
So she's more comfortable. Yeah. And
the boat's
that's
flat, it's two heel.
That's what I saw.
The boat flat is too real.
Well, but that's what I saw from those pictures. I noticed the heel of the boat right away as I looked, and that's why I asked about technique of the driver
what's the
matters.
last outlier on that boat compared to the other ones? Granted, there's 5 people, but it's the same overall crew weight, which is embarrassing for us. But what do you notice?
No, only one person sitting outboard. Oh no, I guess the forward person is too.
One person sitting inboard.
Right, and she's scooted.
Well, the main trimmer here is like barely able to sit up on the rail.
That was sort of what I saw.
So yeah, that's what you
Scooted.
exactly.
Yeah.
And these boats are 5 boat lengths away from each other. They're sailing in the same breeze. Again, flatter sails, less power is going to give you less heel. So this boat, I bet you right now, boats on the right are winning the lineup. The minute they got that extra half a knot of breeze and Ben could scoot his butt out and get more riding moment, get the boat flat again, they're going to be gone. So it's the name of the game, and I think I might have written this later, is, and Alan said it before, is get hiking. Get bodies to weather, get hiking. So I personally would be very afraid of this look until everybody is hiking.
The other thing we took from these pictures is, if you look, and we talked about this boat being in-hauled more.
Yeah.
So helm straight, pushing, right? So there's automatically too much load on the bow of 3 because he's pushing to keep the bow up. While we had height, the jib wanted to pull the bow down just ever so slightly. Look, he's pushing just a touch, but it's just enough that you would want maybe a touch less in-haul, more sheet, end up like the boat in the middle, so we this went straight. So another little trigger there is just pushing. What's that?
Because
That
you
makes
guys
sense.
have like way less backstay than everyone else in that photo. I don't know if that has anything.
Which the boat on the right has less backstay?
I think,
Yeah.
I think it actually doesn't. It's just the, if you look at
Oh,
the
it's
height of
just-
I
the
think it's
thighs.
the gross
Oh, okay.
and the height of the
But it's pushing it. So we want to avoid that straight if you can, which unfortunately J70s you tend to have to push more than other boats. But if you're pushing a lot, it could be just too much load on the front of the boat, or not enough on the back, but the names are pretty similar.
So, as you're racing,
Yeah.
is that like how you set it and you keep just, you stick with that, or are you actually adjusting between kind of the setups of the 3 boats as you're racing, depending on the conditions, depending on where other boats are and so on? Like, how much
It's
are
a
you
lot of
messing with that?
communication between the trimmer, the main trimmer and the jib trimmer. Because the main trimmer's talking to the driver quite a bit, and then kind of it's just a little loop of communication back and forth about how the boat's going, how you feel, how you relatives to other boats, and then you make adjustments around that. I mean, the jib adjustments, this is the thing, is you see everyone, like when Zeke's trimming the main, his adjustments could be this big on the main sheet, right? Up comes big nut, traveler, backstay, like, the jib adjustments are really small, because it makes a, pretty big difference when you do a sizable change.
But I think that's an excellent question, and I would say generally you want to come off the starting line with full twisty sails. Everybody's trying to point when you come off the line. So if you have a little bit of a fuller sail, it'll be a little bit more return with the power, which is going to help the boat point while it's trying to accelerate. So you see that all the time, like in the 50 boat fleets, the boats will start, you'll be behind them and it'll be like, that main's full, that main's full, that main's full, look at all the twist, oh my goodness, how are they sailing? And then halfway up the beat, when the herd thins a little bit, you look at the boats in the front and you're like, that is a flat sail. And for the main, it's backstay traveler main sheet. For the jib, it's most likely not a jib lead change, but it's halyard and its relationship between leeward and windward sheet. So many times we'll be going upwind, we'll get a relative that's maybe not very good, and we'll just say, let's try a little fuller jib. And that tells the jib trimmer that they're going to increase the amount of weather sheet relative to the leeward sheet. They're not going to stall the leech. They're going to adjust everything to make sure that the leech might stay in the exact same spot on the spreader. It's definitely going to always have flow, but it'll be achieving that with more in-hauler, less leeward sheet. Does that make sense? Or the opposite will be, well, let's try a flatter jib. We'll go off the in-hauler, on the leeward sheet. Yeah.
Can you talk about, as you guys are setting up just before the start, like 15 seconds prior to the start, just jib trim at that point, are you presetting the in-hauler? And then, because you guys are talking about, you want punch, you want full bottom of the jib, super important when you're starting. What's your procedure for kind of getting the jib ready for start?
We'll do our pre-race tune-up like well before the race and get comfortable with where we want the marks for both the sheet and the in-hauler in our free and open racing scenario. And then coming off the line, we just know how much to adjust those by. We'll have the in-hauler quarter of a number tighter and the leeward sheet maybe a quarter of a number looser. The halyard will preset to be a little bit on the loose side as well. And then we know once we're free and clear or escaped, we go back to those exact numbers that we had when we were free and clear doing tuning. Is that?
You're asking if it's preset, like in-hauler on with the leeward sheet off and then trim and go, is that?
Yeah, like,
I think
are you trying to?
It depends on kind of, this is where the approach kind of depends. If you're coming in, both sails out high and slow, sailing off the leeches, then yeah, we'll have the in-hauler on and then with the bow down and go. If you're kind of starting from a lower angle and coming up, you kind of can't do that because if you have the in-hauler on, you accelerate too quickly actually, and then you can be early. So it kind of depends on how you approach the line, of whether you do that. The one thing that I think is key though, is when you're getting ready to start, or even tacking, the bow person has to grab the in-hauler like immediately and just pull and hold as much as they can until the jib trimmer catches up. Like you cannot come off the starting line without the in-hauler. So like whoever's in the front, I mean, Franny sails with us, she knows right away, like if we're at 10 seconds, she sees me trimming the leeward sheet, she's immediately onto the in-hauler and she holds it until I get to it. Like when Bill's like, all right, it's time to go, let's go. I'll go to the leeward sheet, Franny grabs the in-hauler, just pulls it to the mark we had for her, and she will hike and hold it until I catch up.
So she's pulling the in-hauler from the block.
Yeah, she'll grab it from like,
That makes
right
sense.
behind the block and just hold it. Like not from the back where the ratchet is, she'll just pull it like from the front and hold it.
However much she can pull
Yeah,
on
right.
helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be all.
And she may not get all of it, she might have 2/3 of it on, which is fine, just to get going. It's probably almost better that she doesn't get all of it because we are accelerating. But it's an immediate, because I'm kind of usually your legs in, trimming as you're getting going, probably waiting the boat moving out, and then as you get to hiking, you turn around and I would take up the rest.
Some teams put another whip mark on the sheet where it passes through the block there, so that the forward
We
person
have,
can
we have that on our.
just have a relative, and it's not a like always put it right, but it's just a relative, so they
Right.
can see the mark of 6 inches from the block, I'm close enough or whatever. Because coming out of tacks, coming out of leeward marks, coming off the start, out of the duck, what have you, it's not, if you can have the windward sheet on, it's best. So I think we'll move off of the jib a little bit, but it's around for the rest of the morning, so as things come up, please holler. So we're kind of moving to look at mainsail trim, and it's, similar concept. The one on the left is a fuller sail and more twist, so you can kind of look at the thickness of the whole sail. It's just a thicker look, it takes up more of the screen than the one on the right. And if you go, as you move up the leash, and you guys see how the one on the left is more twisted, the top of the sail is spilling open. You can't see much of the leeward side of the sail here, where compared to this one, it's sheeted hard and the leech is in.
Is that boom bang as well, or for the?
It could be. It's very likely not in this much breeze. It's probably more to do with the main sheet tension.
Right.
But it could be. The bang will definitely pull the boom down a little bit and close the leech and make the sail flatter. But in this shot, I think it's mostly just main sheet trim. And we're coming back to the number one goal. Like until you are on the rail, you're just doing absolutely everything you can do to get bodies on the rail. That's when the boat starts to take off. And one thing our team learned a couple of years ago is how big a difference the outhaul can make. And the outhauls don't look terribly different in this shot, but the boat on the left, I would say, has a bit of a looser outhaul than the one on the right. And it's actually amazing how much the outhaul will impact 3/4 of the sail, let's say, if not 100% of the sail. When you ease the outhaul off a lot, it gets thicker like you see on the left, it gets fuller and just more power throughout the whole thing, and it's actually a really effective tool to get bodies hiking. So our rule of thumb is if somebody comes off the rail, because we sail into a light spot, they ease the outhaul a lot. So we'll sail with it sometimes that far off the boom in the middle, really, really loose. And it gets you really powered up, and as soon as the last person goes up to the rail, somebody will reach in and pull the outhaul back onto a more kind of normal setting.
So Zeke, that was something I noticed in the lineup where you had the 3 boats next to each other. You guys were talking about how the British boat had
This one
the
here?
flatter sails. It actually looks like they have less outhaul pull on as well.
You think their outhaul is looser
Yeah.
on the boat on the left?
Yeah, I would say that in that picture it could be
So
the
there's
angle,
one-
but it looks like the left boat has less outhaul and the 2 boats on the middle and right are the same, essentially.
Could be. They have the Selden spars, so the boom itself looks a little bit different. I'm not sure I agree with that, just because of this bit of wrinkle there. You can see a little tension coming
Yeah.
on that tells me their outhaul, if anything, is on the tighter side. But
Okay.
it might just be the difference in the look, or I could be wrong. But
Because it also had a shadow under the window there. It sort of made it look.
Yeah, I see those.
That to me looks like a wrinkle from being pulled.
Being pulled.
Yeah, where it kind of folds in, but, or it could just be that their tack is kind of bunched up, and you could be right. It's hard to tell from that angle
Yeah,
compared to
that's
this
I
angle.
thought. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
just-
you could be right.
The other thing I think in this photo, you can see too, the difference of two sails that aren't the same, right? I mean, if you look at the boat on the right, which is our boat comparison, the main is trimmed tight and the jib is kind of loose.
Loose, right.
Or, let me rephrase that, they're not loose compared to the main, right? So we want to sail with the main that tight, we either should bring the jib in, or we should ease the main to match the jib. Whereas if you look at the boat on the left, they're more similar in
So-
terms of depth and trim, twist and all that stuff.
Let me ask a question. It's really easy to see it from here.
Yeah,
When you're sitting in the crew
Yeah.
position, any
Yeah.
crew position,
yeah.
what clues are you looking at on the sails to kind of indicate that, you know, your main is too tight and your jib is too loose, or that you're trimmed appropriately? I mean, how are you gauging that from sitting, just looking up at it? Just right.
Too late.
I think the helm is the biggest trigger right away. And like, you know, the other photo you saw, he was pushing, and this one, he's kind of pulling almost a little bit, and it seems slight, but, I mean, Jack, the one thing he likes to do is whine if he has to pull or push at all. Like, if he has to do any work, he's complaining, basically. So, that's
So you
pretty
really
good.
want a neutral helm, is really what you're thinking.
I think you do, yeah. It should feel as dead as it can be.
I think
It sounds like completely wrong.
So it does sound completely wrong.
Yeah.
It's like every
Very-
other boat, it just feel like mush, basically.
You know, sadly, I think the answer to your question is mostly experience on the relatives. You know, when we're talking about sheet tension, it's really about how closed or open the leech is. So your leech telltales up there are gonna be a big guide for you. The one on the right here, their upper leech tail is definitely gonna be stalled on the main from looking up at it.
Right.
And they'll probably be able to see a little bit of a hook. The other relative gauge that I like to use, and I know Bill does as well, is the distance between the leech of your mainsail and the backstay. There's a big, like, it can be a huge gap like this, or it can be like this, or it can be like this when you haven't tacked the main through correctly. But that's actually a quite good relative that you can use. And then you would look at that, so you would look at this main and you'd say, okay, the leech telltale is stalled. It's that far away from the backstay, up at the upper leech on the main, and then you'd go to leeward on the jib, and you'd say, well, I've got tons of flow on my leech tails on the jib, and I'm outside my outer mark. Those two things probably don't line up. If the leech of the main is this far from your backstay, the leech of your jib should be on your inner mark, because those are both on the tight side of the sail. Does that make sense? So it's a lot to do with the feel on the helm, how the boat's going relative, but then the experience of just taking all those visuals all the time. And you know, you can also try to like visually line up how straight the return is off of each sail. Is it pointing to windward? Is it pointing to leeward? Is it straight on the center line? And that'll give you a good tell as well.
I think the other thing that, for me in this photo, that's good to see, just for your own visual, is you can see the backstays they're not at the top of the backstay, they're not sagging down here at the bottom. And I think one of the most, probably the most critical adjustment on the boat, frankly, is the gross tune of the backstay. And making sure it's set up so that when you're going upwind, you know, maybe the backstay blocks are 30% of the way down or 25%, so you have a little bit to ease, but you have a lot to pull. And especially as you get hiking, you have to have backstay to be able to pull on. The boat loves backstay, basically. The faster you go, the more you pull on, the more you can cheat the main on, it just goes better. So always keeping in mind this gross tune. And the flip side of that is, if it's light, one of the big mistakes in my mind is having it too loose. And you see like people will go upwind and things hang straight down, and the blocks are at the bottom, it's loose. So what happens is you ease the main sheet and the mast literally flops forward on the boat. And the headstay gets too loose and all these other things. So just making sure that you always have the gross tune set up appropriately, I think, is critical. And Zeke's a main trimmer, he probably has tricks, but
So is that driven also by if you have the Selden Master, the Southern?
I don't
You
think
don't
so.
think?
I
Okay.
mean, I think to me, if you adjust the rig, like the tune in between races, you have to adjust the gross tune on the backstay. It's not optional. You have to do both. So if you're easing the rig up, you have to ease the gross tune. If you're tightening the rig up, you have to tighten the gross tune.
Total, yeah, I agree.
I mean, like every times we go up to the settings, you know, whatever it is, 5 and 5, and we pull on the gross tune as hard as we can. And get the math then more than we're pulling the backstay on. So it's a pretty critical adjustment, I think.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about that, and I'm ready to go down the rabbit hole on it, because what if it's too tight?
Right.
In this condition,
Right.
right here, if you blow the control line in the cockpit, you ease it, and the thing goes flying up to the top, the block of the bridle in the back. It goes shooting up there and is sitting up there. Now what do you do? And what does that do to your boat? I'm asking.
Your head stay just got loose. So you're really.
Well, did it?
No,
It got looser. Did it get loose enough? And that to me is like where you just cannot even join the sailboat races. If you get caught in this condition and you go to ease your backstay gross and you cannot ease enough that your head stay will sag to leeward, just stay at the dock because you cannot go upwind. So what happens when your head stay sags to leeward? More power, less power? More power. Do you think these guys would take more power? Definitely. It is a lesson that I learned it in a J72. I got lazy about the gross tune and tried to sail in like a dying 6-knot breeze, and like I could not go upwind because the head stay wouldn't sag. It depowers the entire rig. So the idea is once you're off the backstay a little bit, now what's controlling your head stay tension? If the backstay is loose enough, what controls your head stay tension?
Main sheet.
Main sheet, exactly. So the main sheet trimmer now has in their hand just everything. They can ease off the main sheet a little bit, and now the main's gonna power up and open, the leech of the main opens, the head stay sags to leeward, so the jib powers up, and everything just gets going. If the backstay gross is not loose enough, and they ease the main sheet, what happens? The main stays flat. It gets twisted, but it's flat, so no power. The head stay gets even tighter. Head stay comes to windward. The jib gets bone flat, and we're just glued to the water. So I told you I'd go down the rabbit hole, and here we are. This is painfully important, both when it's light and windy, to have accurate gross tune backstay.
Flicker or no flicker?
No flicker. Come on, get the leech through. You know what goes through the backstay really well? Brand new mainsails.
No, there's a couple tricks you can do. One, a lot of it is technique driven, but two, like you can McLube. I actually McLube the batten itself before it goes in the pocket, so that way the batten will slide inside the pocket and pop easier.
Also, millionaire's taping where it
You
goes
can put
through.
millionaire's tape on the batten pockets.
Well,
But the problem
backstay
with
itself.
the flicker is when the mast starts moving and chop, the flicker bends and you can see the tip of the mast moving. So
So if you could do it perfectly, you would put a flicker on in 7 knots and under, which gives you a 2-knot wind range where J70s are allowed to race, and you will be loving life in that 2-knot wind
Right,
range.
but particularly
Otherwise,
sailing on the Chesapeake, I mean, I haven't been traveling.
yeah, I mean, I kind of think if you figure out the techniques, it's not. I don't even notice it anymore. I don't know if you do, but I mean,
Not
it's
really.
once. I mean, going upwind and tacking, it's not that big of a deal. It's going to pop through. If you have to, you just overshoot for a second, the bat's popping, then you ease it, it goes through. And then it kind of comes down to jibing. And the biggest thing on jibing is if you stop the boom in the middle and kind of just hold it and let it load up, it'll go through. Is that professional?
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think for the jibes, I like to grab the strop of the main sheet right above the block and just grab that and pull down and in, and it will blow through every time. You are right though, like oftentimes here or in Davis Island, we might not start a race in 3 knots, but we'll finish them in 3 knots, and it is really freaking annoying to not have it go through. It comes down to technique. When you're boat handling, a lot of roll and a nice aggressive flatten while the main sheet's going out will help it blow through. It's a lot of practice, but I think
it's worth it.
It feels like you can
flicker.
get better control of the mast without the flicker.
Way better control because the
And the head
flicker's
stick,
dependent.
because if you're going upwind in 12 knots and you have like medium amount of backstay on and the flicker is still deflected a lot, your head stay is just pumping as you're going upwind through any
I think
waves.
the flicker's misleading because you think you pulled the backstay on and all you did was bend the batten.
Right.
Right.
How much bang do you have in the 70s?
planing, works when greasing the main, keeping.
I think we're actually currently learning a lot about the right amount of vang. In this much wind, you wouldn't want to have any vang on. The issue on this boat compared to a lot of other boats, or on this boat like any deck stepped rig, is that when you pull vang on, you're sending the boom into the bottom part of the mast and creating a lot of bend in the bottom part of your mast, which makes your headstay sag even more. So it's a little bit of like, you want to pull some on, but not so much that you're actually loosening your headstay in a condition where you're trying to depower. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's something our coach is on us a lot about, is the right amount of vang, but not too much. And I think generally, as soon as we're up on the rail and hiking and starting to think about depowering, we'll pull the vang on enough such that when you're like